We are back on SportsCenter. Last flashback to one of the greatest endings of the BCS era in terms of upsets. Brandon Weeden, 10-0, number 2 Oklahoma State at Jack Trice Stadium on a Friday night on ESPN. Quinn Sharp from 37 to break the tie. You ask people in Stillwater, they'll tell you that was good. This game was played at Ames, and the official said it's not. What do you think? What do you think? Oh, that was really close. But Iowa State rejoices. We are going to overtime. In OT, Jared Barnett, James White, 25 yards, and the Cyclones have the lead, trying to dash the dreams of the Pokes. A win here would put them ostensibly in the national championship game. And there's Weeden. Back in the old days when Weeden was good and effective. To Josh Cooper, 6 yards. We're tied at 31. Tell a Dallas Cowboys fan he was a great Oklahoma State Cowboys quarterback. Might get a little bit of a doubt. Second overtime. Oh boy. That looks like him with the Dallas Cowboys. Misfortune. Iowa State taking advantage. This is Jeff Woody inside the 5-yard line. Tough run for a tough kid. First and goal for Iowa State. Looking to upend the college football apple cart. You bet. Courtesy of Woody. Iowa State in double overtime wins 37-31. And the Pokes' perfection was gone. Again, that might have been among the biggest upsets of the BCS era. To recap, a 10-0 record for Oklahoma State, ranked second in the nation on the doorstep of the national title game, and then boom, it's over. Now, the Pokes are perfect again, 9-0, ranked number 8 by the committee. Now we're in the playoff era, not the BCS era. And guess where they're headed this weekend? Back to the very stadium where their potential title dreams were dashed 4 years ago. Can't write a better story. Now, 4 years later, our pleasure to be joined by the man that scored the biggest touchdown in Iowa State football history, much to the chagrin of the Cowboys, Jeff Woody. First things first, the anatomy of an upset. Take me inside game week and the prep. What was practice like that week?
Practice was electric that week, and it was one of those things when at Iowa State, you're never favored in games. You're always going to be a dog, and in that game, I think we were 27.5-point underdogs. And when you're looking at an underdog mentality that deep, rather than looking at film of saying, you know, how am I gonna dominate this guy, or how am I gonna beat this linebacker across from me? It's you're trying to find weaknesses throughout watching film and throughout practice. Well, during that week, the start of the week, we kind of watched film and we watched, you know, guys like Blackman and guys like Weeden and guys like Gilbert at corner, and you watch them and you go, man, these guys are really good. But here's a weakness, and here's a weakness where we can exploit it. And then as the week went on, practice got better and better, and we found those weaknesses, and those holes just got a little bit bigger. And I think the thing that gets underrated about that upset is our defense was fantastic. They forced Oklahoma State into 5 turnovers, and they only allowed 17 points in regulation. The other one is a pick 6 on a kind of a botched play. So our defense was an even bigger part of it than I would give myself credit for.
Well said. How about that? Justin Gilbert, Justin Blackman, Brandon Weeden had no answers that day, mostly courtesy of you and what you did. We should mention, though, the day before the game, there was an airplane crash that took the lives of 2 members of the Oklahoma State athletic family. I'm wondering, when you were out there, they were out there 24 hours later, Friday night with their season on the line on ESPN. Did their body language for Oklahoma State, did you see something there with them?
Well, it wasn't necessarily that the body language itself kind of irradiated from them, but you could kind of tell once you punched back, they weren't really able to kind of get back to their feet. I don't think it was something that happened right away. It was that there was so much emotion that they had taken out of them that when we responded, they weren't expecting that. They didn't have quite the same gumption to push back against what we were pushing with them. And the crowd, that was the most electric crowd I've ever been to, and on recruiting visits and other opposing stadiums and great games we've been in. And that was the most intense crowd, and I think all that emotion pushed on them. They just didn't have enough, I guess, soul left after what went on that day, that they just didn't push back quite as much as we were pushing on them.
Yeah, after all, we are all human. There's no question about that. Hey, on a lighter note, take me through the last play, the game-winning score from the call to the huddle to the end zone.
Well, I'll go back a couple plays before that.
Okay.
Well, there's 3 plays that we ran in overtime, and Coach Tom Herman, who is the offensive coordinator for us, then went to be the offensive coordinator for the champion Buckeyes, who's now the head coach at Houston. At Houston, he also took my running backs coach, who was at Iowa State with me. Prior to going on the field, my running backs coach said, "You don't ever take either hand off of that ball whatsoever. So we go on the field, we run the exact same play. We run 2 tight ends, which we had done a little bit throughout the game, and we ran inside zone and inside zone, inside zone, back-to-back-to-back times. And our left tackle at the time, his name is Kelechi Osemele, who's a starting guard and a future All-Pro for the Ravens, managed to pancake 2 guys, a defensive end on top of a linebacker. So my eyes weren't really looking at the whole defense. My eyes were watching what KO was doing, and I was cutting off of him, and then just not taking either hand off the ball, knowing that they were just going to try and strip it. So by the time we had gotten to the 4, I think half the defense was just, this game is over anyway. The other half of the defense was just trying to strip the ball. So as long as I didn't fumble, I knew that I was going to score. So it was great play calling and great execution by a couple future NFL players.
We're looking at it now, the reason why Jeff Woody never pays for a drink within the state of Iowa, taking it in for undoubtedly the biggest touchdown in Cyclones football history. Before I let you go, I listened to you on the radio. You do a great job as an analyst breaking down the Cyclones. What I appreciate more than anything is you don't really pull punches on your own school. If they deserve to be lambasted, you do it. That said, look, this Oklahoma State team just beat TCU by 20. Iowa State has struggled mightily this year. Be honest, because I know you always are. Any chance a little 2011 magic this Saturday in 2015?
I'm not going to completely rule it out, but I'm going to say it's unlikely. For the reason of the best thing that Oklahoma State does is Mason Rudolph throws a fantastic deep ball, and that's how they gouged TCU. They got behind the secondary, and no matter how far back TCU pushed, they were still able to get behind him. I think their first 4 scores came from 25 yards on out. Iowa State against Texas Tech, who was the last team that ran a similar offense in TCU, they were a little bit vulnerable and susceptible to that deep ball. Now, if they can stop that, and they can stop that deep pass and make Oklahoma State earn it underneath, then you can get them to turn the ball over, and you can get them to make mistakes. But the biggest crux of that defense is keeping guys in front of them. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. Is there a chance for it to happen? In Ames, there's always a chance.
There is, because November 19th, 2011 happened, which means it can always happen again. Great analysis. We'll see if Cyclone lore can once again add another chapter to the greatest authored by the man sharing the screen with me. Jeff, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Zubin. Thank you.
You got it. Speaking of the Big 12, these 2 teams have their sights set on